Hey, welcome back, friends. If you want to join the friends, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Today, we are going to be in the Invention Guild because we're going to be looking at a couple of perks that you can actually get for relatively cheap. I'm going to try to keep all of my perking under 5 million GP per set. That means that we are going to have to be making cuts throughout the line, and we're going to try to make this as cheaply as possible. Obviously, there's going to be relatively high costs for all of this. As a matter of fact, weapon Gizmo shells cost 25,000 GP apiece, and armor Gizmo shells cost 16,000 GP apiece. So we're going to be looking at a decent amount of money, and we can't really do anything with too much RNG in it, because otherwise you'd start using up a lot of these Gizmo shells. But without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the best weapon and armor perks to put on your equipment if you're on a budget. So obviously we're going to have 2 weapon gizmos and 2 armor gizmos that we're going to want to fill. 4 armor slots. The first weapon slot that we're going to want to fill is going to be with Precise 3 Equilibrium 2. Now this is a relatively common perk to get if you're going to put in 5 precise components. 5 precise components does have a chance of getting blunted and cautious, which are 2 really bad perks. You just don't want them on your equipment. But within, I would say, about 25 attempts, you should be able to get at least 1 Precise 3 Equilibrium 2. This is also the best way of getting Precise 4 Equilibrium 2 as well. It's going to be relatively rare though, so if you happen to see it, you get really lucky within your first 25 attempts, go ahead and keep that. That's going to be your best perk for, basically in general, it's your best perk. Best in slot. So it's kind of nice that we are putting a little bit of effort towards that, just the best in slot. But it is relatively expensive to do this because we're going to be using so much RNG, and it's going to be 25 attempts before I would expect you to actually get Precise 3 Equilibrium 2. It's going to cost us a little bit over 1 million GP for our first weapon gizmo. The second weapon gizmo is going to be not DPS increasing at all. It's kind of weird that I had to put this in, but there's literally no other gizmo, no other weapon gizmo that's going to be actually good for you to use and actually stand the test of time. So something that isn't going to just become obsolete in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a situational perk here, and we're going to try to get Scavenging 2. Now from this, again, Scavenging 3 is possible. Not likely though. And even if you get Scavenging 3 on a weapon gizmo, it's probably not the best place to get it at. But it is still going to be relatively quick to get Scavenging 2. I think I anticipate getting it within the first 5 to 10 slots, so or 10 attempts. So you should be able to spend less than 500,000 on this. My math I did with 5 chances at getting it, and you should only be spending about 400,000 to get this in 5 attempts. Now, there is the chance of getting Scavenging 3, like I said, not likely. If you do get it, it's extremely good. It's like 2 times as good as Scavenging 2, just the way it works. But realistically, if you get Scavenging 2, you should be happy. And usually it comes with something like looting if you do get Scavenging 2. Spendthrift and Anti-Theism are... Well, Anti-Theism is obviously bad. Spendthrift isn't a bad perk, it's just usually not used at all. It gives you a little bit of extra DPS, but it also costs you money. If you get Spendthrift, it's not bad, but as long as you get the Scavenging 2, you should be good with that. Now, there are going to be 4 armor gizmo shells that we're going to want to be going for. The first one is going to be the most expensive, unfortunately. We're going to be going for Biting 2. The best way to go for Biting 2 is actually going to be going for a combination. There's 2 different ways. The first way is going to be just using 5 direct components, and although there is a slight, very slight chance of getting Biting 3, most likely you're going to get Biting 2. The problem is that you get cautious quite a bit if you're going for Biting 2. So what we're going to do is actually try to get a combination perk instead. We're going to be going for Biting 2 and Venom Blood. What you're going to want to do is put 2 healthy components. A lot of people like to put it like this. I don't think it really makes a difference. But just to put 2 healthy components on these 2 slots and then 3 direct components around them, it's going to give you a lot less chance of actually getting the cautious component or cautious perk. And Biting 2 has the relatively same chance of getting. So I know I've seen a lot of people on the forum say it took them over 100 attempts, but I've also seen people say that it took them only 5 to 10 attempts to get 2 or 3 of these. So I'm going to guess that it's going to take you about 25 attempts to get Biting 2, either just by itself or with Venom Blood or Efficient. Efficient actually is a relatively good perk to get as well. So just Biting 2 with a not bad perk, in other words, Committed or Cautious, we're going to say it's going to take about 25 attempts. Unfortunately, that's going to cost you 1.5 million GP. Now, the reason why I'm willing to invest that money into this perk is because it's actually the best, again, a best in slot perk until you can get Biting 3, which actually takes disassembling noxious components. So I would not recommend doing that if you are anywhere close to on a budget. So I'm going to invest the money in now to getting Biting 2 as well as a not bad perk on 1 Gizmo shell. And it should last time, so that's why I'm willing to invest that money right now. The second perk that we're going to be going for is going to be Crackling 3. Now, Crackling 3 is actually the most likely perk to get if you put 5 explosive components. But it is not a guaranteed. You may get Ultimatum instead. There is a chance of getting both. Ultimatum, again, not a bad perk, so it doesn't matter if you get both. But you just want to make sure you have the Crackling 3 on this. This is going to be a relatively cheap thing to get, and it's a relatively good chance of getting. So what I'm going to say is it's going to cost you about 700,000, because I'm going to say that you get unlucky with your first attempt and just get Ultimatum. And you have to disassemble 2 hand cannons to get 14 explosive components. Obviously, there is a chance of getting trolled with this, and it may cost you a little bit extra. But I'm going to say it's going to cost you about 700,000 to reliably get Crackling 3 perk. Now that we're halfway done with the armor perks, let's look at a couple other perks that we can use. This third perk that I'm going to be using is going to be the last DPS perk that I'm going to be talking about. And it's going to be using 5 Zamorak components. We're going to want to be getting Impatient 3. Now, you may be thinking Zamorakian components are actually really expensive. And to that, I would say yes. Yes, they are. But there is a workaround. Zamorakian War Priest armor is actually free, as all you have to do is kind of grind it out and obtain it from the Zamorakian Fortress area. I think puretppc actually has a really good guide on that, so I'll put it in the links down below. But you're killing like 1,300 Zamorak followers per hour, so you should be getting 2 to 3 War Priest outfit set pieces per hour, or 2 to 3 Zamorakian Zamorak components. Sorry, I'm having a really hard time of saying that for some reason. And Impatient 3 is almost a guaranteed perk to get. So if you are going for this, just go and grind that out for an hour or 2, and you should have enough Zamorak components to basically make this perk. It is also a really good place to actually train your invention, so that's why I'm actually saying that that time investment is worth it, because you're basically just training invention and getting Zamorak components at the same time, and getting Impatient 3 perk relatively cheap. Now, if you want to buy this perk, it is going to cost you about 2.5 million GP per attempt, so definitely not a budget perk. But if you are willing to put a little bit of time into it, I'm personally going to be considering it a budget perk just because you're going to be training invention anyway somehow, so might as well be training it while making this perk. And the last perk is going to be variable. I have 2 different options for you. The first option is going to be using 5 fungal components and going for Absorbative 3. Basically, all this does is decrease the DPS, or decrease the damage that you're going to be taking by a little bit. Absorptive 3 actually gives you, I think it's like 2 or 3% extra damage absorption, which is going to be relatively good in just about any scenario that you are going to be bossing in. And assuming that you're going to want to boss at some point, this is going to be a decent enough option. The other option that I'm going to be talking about is Enhanced Devoted 2 or 3. Because with 5 Zamorak components, we're not going to be expecting to get the Devoted perk. Usually what you'd want to do is get a Impatient 3 Devoted 2, but that's going to cost you a lot of money, and in a budget setup, it's not really the best option. We're going to be going for Enhanced Devoted 2 or 3. If you're ever going to be using Protection Prayers, this is going to actually decrease the DPS that you are getting dealt a decent amount more. And on top of that, it is actually going to be decreasing the DPS a lot that you're going to be getting dealt. And you're going to have the faceted components anyway from disassembling things for the precious components. So, relatively cheap component to get. I personally would recommend getting Absorptive 3 because the faceted components, the Enhanced Devoted 2 or 3, is going to be a rather niche circumstance that you're going to be using them. You're always going to be taking damage, so Absorptive 3 is going to be the better thing to get. If you are already training with Ganodermic, that basically anytime you're training with magic, you're going to be training with Ganodermic. This is going to be essentially free with training. But if you are going to be disassembling for the fungal components, I would expect you to maybe take 5 attempts or so and cost about 300 to 400,000 GP to get Absorptive 3. Obviously, if you're okay with just getting Absorptive 2, one and done, you only have to get 5 fungal components, disassemble 2 Ganodermic boots or 2 Ganodermic gloves, and then just make this component, or make this perk. All in all, I did the math up, and it's going to cost you about 4 million GP with average luck to get the 2 different weapon perks I was talking about, and the 4 armour Gizmos that I was talking about. So you do have about 1 million GP left over, just in case you get a little bit unlucky. But realistically, you should be able to get all 6 of those perks for under 5 million GP. So if you are going to be training up Invention, or if you just are looking for a starting up bossing perk set, definitely worth doing this. If you guys enjoy, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I'd love it if you leave a like and a comment as well. As always though, have a good one.